This is Bowden Street. That's the Bowden Street Congregational Church on the left. Not a church anymore. They're going to make it into condominiums. They've been working on that forever. But the first minister there was a man named Lyman Beecher. You probably never heard of Lyman Beecher. His daughter was Harriet Beecher Stowe. And she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin, you know, very old-fashioned kind of book. You read it today, it's very sentimental, you know. But it was a radical book in its day. It was the first book in America to sell more than 1 million copies. And a big part of the culture wars, you know, before the Civil War, it rallied a lot of people against slavery. Boston was really the center of the abolitionist movement against slavery. Most of the big abolitionists were from Boston, like Mrs. Stowe and William Lloyd Garrison, Charles Sumner. A lot of the money for John Brown's raid, you know, at Harper's Ferry, a lot of that was Boston money. There was a Unitarian minister named Theodore Parker. He was one of the main fundraisers for John Brown. The building on the right, that's the old Bell Telephone building. But right on this corner, not in this building, but right on this corner, that's where Alexander Graham Bell had his laboratory. He was a professor at Boston University. That's where he invented the telephone in 1876, right here in Boston. That's a very important invention. You think about it, the telephone. I think the only invention in Massachusetts that might be as important as the telephone was the chocolate chip cookie. Chocolate chip cookie was invented in 1931 in a town called Whitman. That's about 25 miles to the south, you know, down on the south shore toward the Cape, down that way, Whitman. There was a woman named Ruth Wakefield, wonderful cook, and she and her husband had a restaurant. It was called the Toll House. Usually she would melt the chocolate, put it in the batter, make chocolate cookies, but one day she was in a hurry, so she chopped up the chocolate into little pieces. She thought it was going to melt, but it didn't melt. But she invented the chocolate chip. A very important invention, I think, really. Here's the ugliest building in the city on the right over here. In my opinion, okay, if you disagree, God bless you, it's a free country. You can like what you want. That's the Hurley building, which is a state office building. The architect was Paul Rudolph. Did we actually get the green light there? We never get the green light there. Woo! It is such an ugly building and we have to sit there. It's the longest light on the whole tour. But Rudolph was brilliant. They were called the Brutalists. That's what they called themselves. If you missed it, we're going to see it again on the way back, okay? So don't worry. This whole neighborhood on the left, this is the West End. Used to be very different. You know, it used to be little tenements like this one. 2 and 3, 3 and 4 stories, you know, hundreds of these tenements through this whole neighborhood.
You're recording.
About 20,000 people lived in the West End at one time. Very close-knit, different nationalities. The people who lived there, they called it the greatest neighborhood this side of heaven. But in the 50s, they demolished it. They wiped out the whole neighborhood. Urban renewal. A lot of people think that was one of the biggest mistakes in the modern history of Boston, was the demolition of the West End. Here's the Zachem Bridge on the right. That was built in, it opened in 2003, and it was named after Leonard P. Zachem. He was a civil rights leader here in Boston. He was the head of the Anti-Defamation League. Very well respected around the community, you know. He was known as a bridge builder between communities. He brought people together. He was a uniter. He died very young. He was only in his 40s when he died. So they wanted to name the bridge after him. But the people over in Charlestown had wanted to call it the Bunker Hill Bridge after the Battle of Bunker Hill. So to make everybody happy, they called it the Leonard P. Zachem Bunker Hill Memorial Bridge.
That's so hard.
Which I think is the longest bridge name in the country, I think. I don't know, it goes on forever. It's longer than the bridge. It's not the longest bridge in Boston. It's the widest bridge in Boston. It's 10 lanes wide because it carries I-93, you know, so it's a busy bridge. But the longest bridge in Boston is in Charlestown. It goes over the Mystic River, and that's called the Maurice J. Tobin Mystic River Memorial Bridge, which is almost almost as long, and that's ugly. The Seacom is a much more attractive bridge. So we're heading for the water. You ready? There's the water right there. We can't take the shortcut over the side. Museum of Science on the left. The new Museum of Science. The old Museum of Science I showed you on Boylston Street. The new one was built in the 1950s on the dam between Boston and Cambridge. Once we go past the front door, we'll be in Cambridge. But you know, they got the
just like ours.
Here you come in. I think she's gonna let us. You're gonna let us? I think she thinks I'm just waving. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yep. Well, almost. I try to be helpful. it's not a good idea. Okay, good. Thank you, Connecticut. That's very nice. People from Connecticut are so nice. Anybody from Connecticut? You're so nice. You are. You are. But they got the biggest gift they ever got about 6 years ago from Mayor Bloomberg of New York. He was from Boston. He wasn't from Connecticut. He was from Boston, Medford originally, just outside of Boston. And when he was a kid, his mother and father would always bring him and his sister to the Museum of Science. So about 6 years ago, he gave the museum $50 million. Can you imagine $50 million? I wish my kids could do something like that someday. That would be great. Better yet, they give me the money directly. That would be better. But either way, it's a win-win. Life is full of win-wins. Except when it's full of lose-loses. But, that's life. That's the way it goes. But he didn't go to Tufts, Mayor Bloomberg. Tufts is in Medford. But he went to Johns Hopkins. But Tufts is a really good school. If you're looking for schools, it really is. It was founded in the 1850s by Universalists. That was a religious group. And it was the second college in America to admit women. If you can imagine, way back in the 1850s. The first was Oberlin, in Ohio. Oberlin was first. That was Quaker, I believe. So we're heading for the water. This is North Point Park. This was all an old rail yard up until about 15, 20 years ago. Now look at it, very modern. Big piece of the Berlin Wall right over here on the left. One of the biggest pieces of the Berlin Wall on public view anywhere in the United States, right here in Cambridge. But we've got a chunk of the wall because these two buildings, this one on the left and the one down on the right over there, they're part of an organization called EF, Education First. They were started by a man named Bertil Hult. He was from Sweden. And when he turned 50, all of his employees got together. They bought him a piece of the Berlin Wall for his 50th birthday. Pretty nice gift. Better than a gift card at IKEA, I think. And he shares it with all of us, which I think is really neat. So we're going in the water right around the corner over here. A couple of safety rules, just to reiterate stuff you heard earlier. Life jackets, if you're under 90 pounds, okay, if the captain tells us to put on our life jackets, under 90 pounds, they have the red tag. They're mostly on this side, okay? Over 90 pounds, they have the yellow tag, and they're mostly on the captain's side. There's a fire extinguisher in the back. There's a fire extinguisher in the front. There's a life ring here in the front. There's also a life ring in the back, too. And the emergency exits, if we have to evacuate the duck, the emergency exits are the windows. Okay, we go out the windows. The front window also opens up, and the back canopy can actually be opened up. The back part of the roof is actually openable. You can actually open that up. So with that, here we are at the water. You ready?